everyone. Okay, just get my camera. Hi, guys. All right, so I'm back today. I'm going to be here this week and next week. So if you want to join me every day, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll be talking about all sorts of fun intuition stuff. So today we are going to be talking about spirit guides, which yeah, it depends on your background, like how that can feel. Might feel like a little scary, but hopefully I'll make it feel very unscary and very, accessible. And I want to tell you first a little bit about how I got into spirit guides and, what they might be used for. So first and foremost, like what is a spirit guide? So a spirit guide is a being, like an energy, right? Like a spirit that is not in human form that is around us and is working with us to help us live into our soul's purpose. There's a range of spirit guides, like your grandmother who passed away could be a spirit guide. Jesus or Buddha, like, could also be a spirit guide for you. And then sometimes it's just these souls that we have lived with in other lifetimes or with us, angels, all that kind of stuff. So there's a big range, and we'll talk about that later. But I just want you to kind of understand that they really are like a spiritual coach that is assigned to us, and as a soul, we have some sort of connection to them. We may not remember them, but they are part of like what has helped us make this soul contract and this soul path this lifetime. And at some point, we usually start to remember and connect with them. Also, if you ever go to like a psychic reading, sometimes some of the psychics or the people that you're getting the information from, they are connecting to spirit guides. They could be connecting to their own spirit guide, or they can be connecting to your spirit guide. So sometimes the information, this like intuitive information, is coming from the guide. But so that's just a quick overview of like what it is. But I want to break it down a little bit, and I want to start off actually with my own story, if that's okay with you guys, to just kind of relate. So, like I mentioned yesterday, I was raised, my family's Cuban. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school my whole life. So, spirit guides was like, I mean, just like not even a thing. But what happened was, like, as I started to go through a spiritual awakening, I, and I had that, like, I had met a psychic, and she introduced me to the concept of angels. And I felt that was like, I felt very okay with that, because I was like, oh, there's angels in the Bible. Like, angels were always like seen as a good thing in like my upbringing. So I was like, okay, I can get behind that. And the way that I understood is that when she was reading me and like giving me all this like intuitive information, she was working with these angels that were around me. And I thought that was like super fascinating. So I studied and I read up on that and all that kind of stuff. And it was easy for me to understand that like an angel was like watching over me, protecting me, kind of like a guardian angel. I don't know if you guys have ever felt that. Like, have you ever like gone down like a really shady like alley, or you're doing something, like you're like, this is very dangerous. Like, you get this sense that like this is not a good idea, and somehow you're protected the whole way through. You're like, wow, like I could have like gotten in, or I almost died in that accident, or like there was an accident, two cars in front of me and the person died, but I was like right behind it. And just these kind of weird things that you realize, like, for some strange way, for some strange reason, you were protected. That is definitely like angel realm. Like, that is what we know that they do. And the reason that there is this like breakdown of these like protective beings that work with us, an angel, spirit guide, that kind of stuff, is because, remember, like, we are all part of like God, right? Like the source energy. But sometimes like it's very hard for us at this level to like understand like that source energy, that God, the divine. So these angels are like messengers, right? And these like, and also the guides are messengers for us. So it helps us like break down these like very high concepts. So that's why, like, as souls, it's helpful to have these energies and guides around us. So it's nothing like, it's like, for me, it was hard. I had all that Catholic guilt that I was like, oh, this is paganism. I should be like talking to Jesus and God and only them. And um, I started to understand that like these beings actually like work, we all work for the same thing. And they're just like trying to help us understand these like larger concepts and to remember. And also these guides, like we, our souls have known them all, for many lifetimes. We've worked with them. Sometimes they're when we pass and we're in between lives, like basically like after one lifetime moving into the next lifetime, you're like in a little school in like heaven, if you want to call it that. And these guides are like our coaches and our teachers. So we know them very well. And but what happens is we come to this lifetime, we forget everything, and these guides help us remember. So that's the whole point of them. So I was like learning about angels and was really into that. And I felt like I could connect to an angel. And then later, I actually just randomly was studying. I was an editor at the time, and I wrote this article on this woman who did this like energy healing called Theta Healing, and I found it super fascinating. And she was teaching a certification class, and I like was an editor. I had no interest in doing this as work. I was just fascinated by this, and I thought it could like help heal me and the stuff that I was going through. So I studied this thing called Theta Healing, and in so Theta Healing is kind of like it's like almost like a woo-woo version of hypnosis. So it's a lot of like reprogramming your mind, but it's definitely using like some metaphysical concepts and energy and that kind of stuff. So, but anyways, I'm studying that, and part of the practice of theta healing was like you basically like to get into your intuitive state, which is like getting at the theta brainwave level. You are starting off and like rising into these like densities or these like energy levels, right? So the idea is that on Earth we're at a level 3, and you're like rising up to get the information from 7, which is like source, all that stuff. But at each level you meet different levels of consciousness. So by at some point as I was going into this, I meet like this being. I was like, in my meditative state, and I was like, there's something like trying to talk to me or communicate to me. Like, what is happening? I wasn't really sure. And then I realized, like, because I had already heard this word spirit guide, the guide was like, oh, I'm your spirit guide. I was like, oh, I have one of those things. And I started like, I was a little weirded out by it, but I decided that I was going to like put time aside every day and meditate with my spirit guide to see if I could, I don't know, like to see what it was trying to tell me. So when you're connecting with a spirit guide, I know it feels like very like woo woo and like out there, but it's actually like it's like exactly the same way where like if maybe you had like a loved one who passed away, and sometimes like you feel the presence of that loved one and you can like feel them talking to you. That's you connecting to the energy of your loved one, right? So the loved one was in physical form, in a physical body, but they died. But it was really that their body died, not their soul or not their energy. So their energy continues to exist. And that is why they can come visit you and be with you, but not in physical form. So it's a little weird because you can't see them physically, like you can't touch them physically. They don't have language. So you're really using your intuition to be able to understand what they're trying to say. And you guys have probably maybe felt this before, like you feel like they're sending you a message or they're saying something, but you don't like have words to explain it. All you're doing is you're picking up on energy. Like there is like energy being sent from the spirit of the loved one, and you are, believe it or not, understanding it and like translating it into words. So the spirit guide is the same idea. The spirit guide might as well, you can look at it as like a past loved one because they are not in physical form. Um, so you can see them, all that kind of stuff, but you can learn to connect with them and receive, whatever information they're trying to share. So that is done through meditation. So basically, like I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to sit in meditation and see like if this guy, the spirit guide comes to visit me. So I would just like close my eyes and visual. So the first thing you do is you close your eyes, you visualize a place of nature. So a place of, this is always like when you're connecting and trying to read like energy of these different, guides and things like that, you're always starting at that place of nature because it's almost like think about when you're about to like write something, you start with a blank document, but at least you have like somewhere to start. That's kind of what the place of nature is. So you close your eyes and you visualize, you imagine a place of nature. Sometimes when you close your eyes, like a place of nature might come to you naturally, or you may have to like bring yourself there, right? So for me, the first start was actually there was this tree outside of my house that I loved, and every time I would close my eyes, I would just see that tree. So I basically like would close my eyes, see this tree in this like grassy area, and you see yourself in that place of nature. So almost like you're watching a movie of yourself. So you're seeing yourself like under the tree or whatever your place, maybe your place of nature is a beach or whatever. And you sit there and you call in, like, I'm, ready and willing to meet with my spirit guide. So you just kind of hold your focus there, like keep holding that picture, and then notice what comes in. And it might be just like a color. Like I think sometimes people are picturing like, they're waiting for like a full blown like Native American, like trying to come and be their spirit guide, but it could seriously just be like a color. You could have a feeling. Sometimes a lot of people feel like just like tremendous like love come over their body, but they're not seeing anything, and that's okay. And the first few times you meet with your spirit guides, you're not going to get like all this like amazing information. It starts off slow. So really like just spending some time and you may and the thing about intuition, because basically what you're doing is you're holding like focus and you're trying to like read energy, and that sometimes like takes a little bit of time. Like our brains have to like work up to that. So the first time you do this meditation, you may only be able to hold that focus for 5 minutes, but as you do it a little bit more and more, you start to like be able to hold it for 10 minutes and 15 minutes and 20 minutes, and that's where you get like the deeper information. But so like don't get frustrated if you don't see much. I also have a free guided meditation on my website at nikkinovo.com on spirit guides if you want to like do it with me, where I guide you through that process. And then so the spirit guide is really like there to remind us of our soul's true path. So when I started to meet my spirit guide, funny enough, I was like I was already like coaching, like life coaching a little bit, but I didn't know what I was doing. And my spirit guide started to show me how to read energy. So I actually like learned to be intuitive through sitting in meditation with my spirit guide. So I do these readings called the soul readings, and it's also what I teach. Like I certify people to do these soul readings, and that was like downloaded from these meetings with the spirit guide. And I guess it was information I always had, I guess from other lifetimes, but I obviously did not remember this lifetime. So every time I would meet, the guide would show me a little bit more of like how to do these like readings. And then I would go and work on clients and I would test out this reading and it really started to work. So that was like fascinating. Like that guide came for that. But then you have like several guides. So after I did a lot of that, and he was like my wizard guide, like my very metaphysical. But then other guides started to come in. Like I had this one female looking guide come in, and it was very much like to help me with like the divine feminine. Like I was very much like in a masculine place, and I was doing a lot of like healing and divine self kind of stuff. And that guide would come and visit me and just like share messages with me. And I just started to like understand these messages and like live my life according to those messages. So it's like you just have more connection to your soul. And, there's so much work you can do with a spirit guide, but also you'll sometimes the way the spirit guides show up, show what kind of lifetimes you've been living. So sometimes like you may have that Native American, spirit guide, and that is showing you that like you had a lifetime like that, or that like you came from a time where you were also a Native American and you guys were friends at that time, and now that soul like doesn't have to reincarnate anymore, so it is coaching you from afar. And they always like come for different things. I mean, you can even have like a business spirit guide if you like want to call that in, and you just work with them on your evolution. And at some point, even though like the best way to meet them is through meditation, at some point you'll also just kind of like be able to like walk through your day and like feel the guide come and share things with you. There's these guides that are like, outside of us, that they're like kind of different than we are. But then there's also like a lot of people like to work with the spirit guide, which is your higher self. So the higher self can also be a guide. So it could actually like be like you guiding you. Like it does not, like if you're not down with like, oh, I don't know if I want an angel or like some random, wizard guiding me, because that sounds weird. But I love the idea of like my higher self guiding me. Like that can be your guide. And if you get into like intuitive work and want to do readings and stuff like that, you can work, like you can receive all the messages from your higher self. So the higher self is basically, it's even like, imagine there's like the higher self, your soul, and then the human self. So the higher self is like the one that's like closest to the divine. Like that is the part of us that's like divine. And then right below that is the soul, but the soul has, believe it or not, like the soul is not like 100%, perfect. The soul has been through many lifetimes. It's evolving. It's working through stuff, but it still like has a much higher vantage point. It has like no ego, basically. And then there's like the human that has like the ego, and that's why they have like we have like a very limited vantage point. But as a human, we could connect to the higher self, and you almost want to see the higher self as like your big sister, like your big brother that's like guiding you through. And that way you don't have to like go outside of that and feel, and like maybe you don't feel comfortable with, other types of spirit guides. So this higher self like also is a great guide. So you can go into your meditation and specifically call in your higher self. You could go into the meditation and be like, I'm open to seeing whatever. Or you can go into the meditation and be like, I would like to see my mother who passed away, or I would like to see my higher self. And usually the higher self looks like uh I don't know, like an extreme version of yourself. Like, it's like you look like very holy and like whimsical and all that kind of stuff. So the higher self like does look like you're gonna see it almost like as you, but a higher version of it. So sometimes it's just easier. And then once you're there and you're like connecting, you basically are trying to hold focus on what you feel like you're receiving. So let's say, and you want to come to with a question. So let's say, okay, I'm going to go into meditation. I would like to meet with my higher self. Um, I would like to know what, I mean, sometimes if you ask like really big questions, like, what's my purpose? You're going to get something very like generic. So sometimes it's easier to break down some of those questions, So be like, um, I like, I'm between these two kind of jobs. Like, what would be my highest and greatest good, let's say? And when you ask that question, you want to like just, I like to have a piece of paper and pen with me because that's like the best way to get past my mind. Because what happens is like the information comes, like the energy is being sent to you, like almost like telepathically. But we have a brain, and typically we're going to filter those messages through our brain, and our brain has a lot of biases. And what happens is like if I'm really like, this is weird and I'm judging and like this is crazy what I'm doing, even though the message is trying to come through me, it's going to get stuck in all this like logical, like kind of biased judgment. And then it doesn't actually like drop into me and I lose the message. So the trick is to like be in that meditation, let it come, like let like the message come, and just be like, even if it's the craziest thing, I'm just going to write down what I feel I'm getting on this notebook, and I can judge it later once it's on the notebook, but I'm going to try to like not stop the message like through this process. I'm just going to be like super curious and open to whatever comes through. So intuition, it always works better when you are in a like a open, very I say curious. Curious is like the best energy. Like, oh, like I don't know. Let's see if I'll find my spirit guide. Let's see like what I get. There you can go into the meditation in many different ways. You can go in super scared, right? Like, oh my gosh, I grew up Catholic. I'm very afraid. That's not going to be great because then you're going to see something scary. Like whatever. I can go into the meditation being like, this has to work. I like need to see my spirit guide. Like I'm dying to see my spirit guide. That's not great because that's like, closing the opportunities. Or I can be like, oh, this sounds fun. Like, let's see what happens. Like, let's see who I meet. And like, actually, that openness and that lightness is an energetic match to your intuition. So, like, anything else is too closed or too scared and doesn't allow the fullness of the information to come through. Right. So, it's like kind of like a closed mind versus an open mind. So the more open you are, like the more that stuff will come through, and the less you judge yourself, like, oh, I'm just gonna write down what I feel like I'm getting, the more access you'll get to your true messages. So like before you go into any intuitive meditation to really open up your heart and your curiosity, and you can even like move your body and be like, oh, this is going to be fun, I'm going to go do this, and that is going to like really change your experience. There's something else I wanted to say. Oh, okay, so when you're receiving the information, remember that everybody has like different ways of getting their intuition. So some are going to be very visual. And a lot of the times, like even if you do one of my guided meditations, it's going to be very visual because that's like kind of the only way we can like guide people to this process. But remember that you might be like a feeler. You might go into your meditation and be like, I see nothing. So don't worry about that. Pay attention to like what you're feeling. And whatever you're feeling, can you put it into words? I don't know if you guys have ever watched like the Hollywood Medium. Like he like he's like talking to dead people basically. And a lot of the information he's getting is coming through his body. So he's like he's feeling a lot of it. And then he's putting words to what he's feeling. And those are my feelers. Like, and some people that is like their intuitive gift. I know that it can be very overwhelming because you don't want to feel everything. So ultimately, you want to work on the other types of ways of receiving intuition. But that is okay if that's your starting point. I was a big feeler. I didn't want to see, actually. I was very afraid of seeing. I was like, I remember talking to my spirit guides and being like, okay, I think you're coming. Like, but I have no interest in seeing you. Like, don't show up in my bedroom. Like, I gave them like boundaries. I was like, I'm okay with like hearing you and like receiving signs, basically. And that was like my first way of communicating. Now I'm very visual and like all my senses are turned on because I felt as the more safe I felt, the more I was like willing to go there. Okay. So when you're there and you're like, okay, I'm like in this place of nature, I'm like meeting with the spirit guide, ask yourself, like, what are you feeling? What are you hearing? Because what's interesting is people are getting like little like messages, and that's one way. Like some of us hear. That's one type of intuition. That's like my strongest one. Actually, if you're very sensitive to sound, like throughout the day, you're probably your intuitive sense is probably going to be hearing. So pay attention to like what you feel like you're hearing. Also, some of us are downloaders, right? Like so claircognizant, where like it just drops in your brain. Which these are the ones that I always say, like, these are the ones that grew up thinking that we're like judgmental because like we just know shit and we're kind of like bitchy about it. But it's just that the information like drops in. So when you're in that meditation, is anything like dropping in? Like, it's something like random that that doesn't feel like, I don't know, that doesn't feel like fearful or doubtful. It's just kind of like a knowing, and write that down, right? So are you hearing anything? Are you feeling anything? Is anything dropping in? Like what's happening while you're meditating? So like don't put all this focus on the visual if that's like not really what's working for you. And that's how you begin to get your messages. And with a spirit guide, it's really a relationship. So you just want to make some time a couple times, a week or whatever, and sit down for 10 minutes or so and start to connect. And with time, you'll know your spirit guide's personality like so well that you'll be walking down the street and you'll be like, oh, look, there's my higher self, like sending me this message because you've already gotten to know them very well on the mat, like in meditation. So, you know, like eventually that will happen. And then, yeah, and then like, even if you want to get into like the fun game of like reading messages for friends, your spirit guide is very helpful because like you'll understand them very well. And then um let's say like you want to read a message for a friend, like your spirit guide can be the one giving you that message. So that's why it's like helpful. And to do like more intuitive stuff, it's nice to have like that base with spirit guide. And there's so many different types of spirit guides, guys. So like don't feel like there's not one for you because it could be. And also a funny thing is like I was getting different spirit guides, and I remember like my third spirit guide, it was like another guy, and I was like another dude. And I was like, guys, like I'm tired of these dudes. Like, give me like a female, like give me something different or whatever. And that guide like changed its appearance for me. And it was like, is this better for you? And I was like, yeah, that's like better than like I like she's like a female and she's interesting and all these things and she's diverse. So I was like looking for diversification in my guides, basically. So like if the visual doesn't work for you, it's okay for you to like ask. Also, some guides come in the form of spirit animals or even nature. Like you might have like a tree, as your guide. So like be open and be curious and see what's there because it actually like makes this human life easier. Like you're not like left fully alone because you can start to get that information from this like soul part of you. And these guides are like your friends that want to help you remember. So yeah, guys, I hope that was helpful. Does anybody have any questions about spirit guides before we get going? And remember, I have this free meditation on nikinovo.com. Let me see if I can tell you exactly where it is on spirit guides in case you're interested. I think it's under develop. I think it's under okay. So it's nikkinova.com/intuition. And I have a free spirit guide meditation that might be like a good starter that you just like listen to it and have your notebook with you and like see what happens. So that'd be cool. And then I teach more programs too, but this is like a really great start. Yeah, and if you have any questions, like just no, there's nothing too weird, and like I hope it's just you might have even felt this already. Like I remember when I started talking about spirit guides, I was at a party and I was super nervous to come out of like the spiritual closet because, like, the world I grew up in, like, that's like crazy talk. And my husband's friend's wife like comes up to me at the party and she's like, I saw you talking about spirit guides. I feel like I've always had like an angel around me. Do you think that that's what it is? I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So some people, like, even if they're, not even thinking about spirit guides, like realize that they have one. But wouldn't it be nice to like talk to them and communicate with them? And that is like that next step of like you developing your intuition with them. And the cool thing about if you're interested in developing your intuition is really just learning to read energy. It's learning to read the unseen. So actually like getting to know your spirit guide is a good exercise for you to like learn to hold your focus and read the energy of a spirit guide. So it gives you like a point of focus. Because I know a lot of people like when they think about, oh, I'm trying to get messages, like I'm just going into meditation and trying to quiet my mind. It's like that doesn't work. You actually need a point of focus. So the spirit guide and like visualizing, let's say, your higher self is a point of focus. And as like you hold your focus there, you're learning to like get information from that energy. And that's how your intuition gets stronger. So it's also like a little fun game that helps you get stronger and stronger in your intuition. Yeah. All right, guys. Yeah, if you have any questions, if you have other ideas for um, like other videos, things that you would want me to talk about, I'm super open to that. And I'm just like excited to be here with you on live. I'll be here again tomorrow talking about Akashic Records, which is um, it's a energetic place that we can travel to where all the information of our soul exists. So that'll be fun if you want to join me tomorrow. All right. Thank you so much. Bye, guys. Have a great week.